Hey everybody, Greg Cazillo from Cazillo.com. A couple of, say, months ago, something like that, I did a video on on rules of composition and the rule of thirds. And so that was really the first one of that series, and this is probably the second one of that series. And this time I'm going to go over foreground, middle ground, and background. Now, basically what it means is we're creating and we're capturing things in a three-dimensional world, but we're taking that three-dimensional world and we're putting it into a two-dimensional medium, which is a photograph, which is actually, you know, a real photograph. I don't have any lying around here. A real photograph is, you know, two-dimensional. It's thin, so you're not seeing that third dimension. And the same with when you're on the computer. It's a two-dimensional thing that you're looking at. So the goal here is to give it as much dimension, as much depth as possible in any image. As I'll show you in a lot of these examples, there are plenty of ways to do it. And I'd say the first thing is a matter of walking around. Don't just settle for what you see in front of you. Take a couple steps to the left, take a couple steps to the right, back up, change your lens, do something to change it up. There might be a total, a completely different way of setting it up, of doing it, that is so much better and looks amazingly well, amazingly good, and then you're done and you have that great photo. So it really depends. Now, in this first photo that I have here, my foreground element is the table. All right, that is given that illusion of depth, that 3D feel to us. This is the way that we would see it, although it's not consciously. It just happens, you know. In our normal world, we don't realize that everything is that third dimension. It just happens for us. And the second, in the middle ground, is probably this part of the kitchen here. A little bit of the floor, the window, maybe. I guess the window could be for middle ground or background. But the background is definitely these cabinets and the ceiling with the lights. So, again, feeling of depth in a little bit different place. It's not necessarily the usual place where you think about it, which is your scenic photos. And here's a good scenic photo example. I left this cactus here in the foreground for a reason. That's my foreground, along with these other grasses and things, and here's another smaller one here, and then my middle ground is Red Rock Canyon. As my phone is beeping, let's turn that off, and then the background is my sky. So foreground elements, there's another good example, and this one is the perfect example. Whoops, there it goes. What did I do? This one is the perfect example that I shot last year at the Hoover Dam. Leaving this road is the perfect foreground example. You see the cars, there's so much interest, there's so much stuff going on. Then you have the middle ground with the bridge and the rocks and the mountains and everything, and then the background of a little bit more mountains and the sky. Perfect example of foreground, middle ground, and background that gives you that depth, that makes you feel, and in your mind's eye, you're seeing things just like it happened when I was there, you know, having that you know, you're kind of looking down and you see that that road down in front of you, and then, well, the bridge is over here, and then the sky and everything, so you're really seeing that and feeling it. And I think that's the key, is feeling it. Now here's a good example of including the fence. Instead of just cropping really, really tight, now obviously I use the rule of thirds here in addition to it, but also keeping this fence in the frame makes a difference. Giving your eye some perspective can really help a photograph. Obviously you see the Jeep, you see the trees, so you know that this object is really big, but adding one more in this fence can definitely help the image. That's a good foreground. Middle ground is the grass and the balloon, and then background trees and blue sky. Here's another one, although it's what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, it doesn't matter. The different parts and pieces of it, can't think of the word, are to scale or are different. So This is our foreground. It's a little bit of just the cut down corn, which is actually, it's just a cornfield in beginning of fall. I think I shot this, no, in June. Okay, so still cut down corn, or maybe it's soybean, something like that in the foreground. Now the middle ground is our the farm and the tree line, and then the background is really huge, which in this instance is actually more of the kind of the main part of the image. But again, understanding these rules is the way to actually break them and then create great photos around them. So another good example there. Now this one I took with my friend John back in 2010. We had gone out for a photo expedition around Philadelphia. This is such a cool photo. I love this. It was a perfectly clear day, not a sky, not a cloud in the sky, but leaving the boats in the foreground, and then the water and the bridge is on an angle. It's not straight across. Really cool photo, and then the background of the blue sky is awesome. Here's a portrait example, and this doesn't happen a whole lot because typically when we're shooting portraits, we're going to have a shallow depth of field, so it's a little iffy on that. Typically, you kind of only have foreground and background, not really foreground, middle ground, background. But in this instance, we have all three. Brian, he is in the foreground. I'll actually give you a little story about this image. Brian had just jumped up out of their arms. When he was little, he was the kind of kid that did not like to sit there in your arms. He would just run, move, move. So 5 seconds before I shot this image, he was sitting in their arms right there, and guess what? He started running at me, so I quickly changed my focus and my focus point and everything, and got this image. Really cool photo. So that's a really, really good one. This is a fun one too. I actually did this one a couple years ago of a friend of mine's. He actually works on my car, or my Suburban, of his Rottweiler when she was still a puppy. Now, I wanted that kind of junkyard dog kind of feel a little bit, you know. So this was her bed with her bowl sitting there, and obviously she's in the foreground. My middle ground is all this stuff right here on this side, and bowls are kind of middle ground, and then background is going way off over here, seeing the shelves and all that. Here's a good example of kind of the portrait end of it, which could be the same as this. Really kind of is a portrait, kind of a composition, but obviously it's not a portrait. It's not a person. So having one sunflower here, but then another one here in the foreground, some more here, and then these back here way blurred out. Foreground, middle ground, background. Here's another good example. Again, portrait, but it's more foreground and then just background. Now, we do have some other compositional elements in this image, but I won't talk about that today since we're talking about foreground, middle ground, background. So, foreground, maybe a little bit of this fore, and then this middle, and then this back, maybe. But no matter what, that nice blurry background is bringing your eyes back up here. Last one I'm going to leave you with is a baby photo, and everybody likes babies. So, Julie here, again, took this last year. Really cool photo. She's in the foreground here, or maybe we'll call it middle ground, because we have mom's hands here in the foreground and in the background, and then we see more of this blanket here. So depends on how you cut it, how you see it, but still those elements help to make this image. You see, you know, such a cute face on her, and having those additional items in the frame of mom's hands. It was just a quick grab shot. It wasn't even a posed photo, so you know it works, and you know it's a cool example. So, questions, comments, concerns? Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments. Greg Cazillo, Cazillo.com. Keep shooting. See ya.